Welcome to Ancient Geeks, a podcast from a couple of geeks of a certain age. From our youth to the present day, we look at the development of fantasy and science fiction culture and all its manifestations. We were geeks before it was chic. I'm your co-host, Stephen Taylor, and he who controls podcasts controls the universe.
I'm your co-host, Tom Grant, and I'm the result of centuries of careful genetic manipulation.
I knew it! I also want to share another quote. I couldn't quite work it in, but it's a great quote for the podcast. It is impossible to live in the past, difficult to live in the present, and a waste to live in the future. That seems to sort of fit, doesn't it?
Yes,
anyway,
it sure does.
In case you don't know what we're talking about, today on Ancient Geeks, we're talking about Frank Herbert's 1965 classic, Dune. In fact, we're starting...
Lorna Dune?
Lorna Dune.
Dude, what?
Exactly. We're starting a 3-week odyssey. Well, I'm calling it Dune-A-Palooza.
Perfect.
And we're doing the novel this week. We're going to do the David Lynch movie next week. And then the week after, we're going to do the new 2-part Villeneuve film that adapted the novel Dune. I did realize we're skipping because I never saw it, but I know it exists. Wasn't there a miniseries on Sci-Fi? Did you see it?
Yes, there was. Yeah, it was decent.
I did not see it.
It was decent.
So before we get into this, what are you doing this week in geekery, Tom? Anything of interest?
I finally finished the final season of Resident Alien, and that was a very enjoyable show, I have to say.
It's on my list of things to see. I have not seen it yet.
Yeah, so I was reading something recently where someone said that there are movies that are perfect, but they're not necessarily great. They're not high art, and in some respects, I think Resident Alien was like a perfect. I don't know what the equivalent is of a B movie on TV, but it for what it was really good. And practically anything that Alan Tudyk is in, is watchable, and he does a fantastic job throughout. There were laugh out loud moments, there were touching moments. It was just a fun show. And then I just started watching belatedly Daredevil: Born Again, and I've enjoyed the first few episodes.
That's good to know. No, I have, as I was saying offline, I've been cramming for this episode like I'm preparing for a seminar. So I really have not had a lot of extra free time. I have done some continued forays into some more contemporary comics in the Marvel universe, and of course I'm enjoying Pluribus still, which drops tonight as we record. As I will hint into when we do this recording today, I'm looking forward to that.
Okay.
So. How about music, if we could afford to license music for this podcast?
So sticking to my very characteristic indecision, I first went with Kashmir by Led Zeppelin, which I have as certainly a raucous-like overtones. But then I was looking on Spotify, and I had forgotten until I searched for Dune music on Spotify that there was an album in 1977 done by David Matthews, not Dave Matthews, David Matthews, that was intended to be a soundtrack to the book. And it's kind of wacky because the music could have been written for a 70s TV cop show. It has the same vibe. Like it could have been the background to an episode of Banachek.
Is there Duwaka in the background?
Oh yeah, there's definitely Duwaka. So
awesome.
Or Starsky and Hutch, Streets of San Francisco. This music would have fit in almost seamlessly, at least some bits of it, if for episodes of shows like that. So that's ultimately what I chose, just because it's so odd.
That works. So all I could come up with, and I did struggle with this one a little bit, but every time I try to think of an appropriate song for this podcast, this topic, all I could think of was America's A Horse with No Name, because he rode through the desert. So maybe it should be a sandworm with no name, but nonetheless, that's all I could think about. Anyway.
There's some filking out there, opportunities out there.
There's got to be. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah,
good point. So, real quick, I was looking somewhat at the history of the novel, some which I was aware of, some which I'd forgotten. But just real quick, so again, the novel was originally published in 1965, so it's been around a while. But it was originally serialized in Analog magazine. Like, it's sort of interesting how many. Like, I know Foundation was serialized. We talked about how some of the Amber series is serialized. It was a sort of well, heck, didn't Charles Dickens? He was also serialized. It's like an old school thing. But I was fascinated that it was originally published by a publishing house called Chilton, which was known mostly for auto repair manuals. and that the first edition was like crazy expensive. It was
Huh.
like it was like 5.95 in the 1960s, but that's like 59 or 60 bucks now. And oddly, it didn't sell very well at first. But of course, we all know that it went on to become a legendary and it's sort of a sci-fi empire of its own.
Right.
Another thing, not surprisingly, Herbert was interested in desert ecology after having visited some dunes in the Pacific Northwest. But the other part that I did not know about, he was also apparently into magic mushrooms, and that partially inspired some of his, uh, you know, dreams and powers
Right.
of the mind
Well, and the spice.
and the spice. Yes,
Yeah.
so I thought that was sort of interesting. Anyway,
Huh.
so how did you encounter this novel?
Well, I think it was in early high school. It was either early high school or middle school.
Okay,
And I remember I had a used copy. It may have been the one with the really freaky Bruce Pennington cover. And I recommend people look that up.
okay,
Uh, when you often had sci-fi paperbacks, which had kind of oddly abstract or very offbeat sorts of illustrations on the cover. It wasn't kind of too representational.
that's
Anyway,
right.
so anyway, I read it quickly. I remember blowing through the novel
Hmm.
because it was so engaging, so fascinating. There was so much happening in the book, and we'll talk about all
Oh
these
yes.
things, but it is a jam-packed book for the literature of ideas that is science fiction. And how about you? How did you discover it first?
Well, one I will note on the art thing. You're right. Science fiction books, especially of this era, were a great proof of the notion you cannot judge a book by its cover. Because it
Yeah.
seemed rather frequently that the artist did not necessarily know really what was in the book when they
Oh
drew
yeah. Well, I wrote a whole blog post on the
Yes,
Substack
yes,
about
yes,
this.
yes.
Yeah, it was great art.
Oh, and no, no,
Don't get me
absolutely.
wrong. I mean, I love the art, which is why I
Right.
wrote that particular blog post. But it was unusual, I would say.
Yeah. So yeah, I encountered the book definitely in high school. I very distinctly remember this book after we had moved from Texas to California. So it would have been, I probably my junior year of high school, but I'm not positive exactly. Excuse me. I remember I just had this very distinct memory of reading the book in my room in my parents' house in Mission Viejo. I don't know why I read the book. I don't know if it was because I knew that movie was coming out or the Lynch movie had been out, or someone had recommended it to me, or I just found it at the used bookstore. But yeah, I was enthralled by it. I was just captivated by this book, and I remember likewise just really really diving into it. So it was an impressive, significant book. I mean, it's the kind of thing that really. I mean, it has politics and it has history and it has world building and characters. It's just a great thing, right? So I really was drawn into it. In fact, I would say that why should someone who's not read this book and who's still listening to this podcast, why should they stop right now and go read the book and come back? What's your pitch?
This was the first book to win a Nebula Award. It actually tied with a Roger Zelazny novel, This Immortal,
Okay.
and it really deserved it. So this was the book I think everybody said that's a great piece of science fiction, and the reason why I would say is it was not merely jam packed with ideas, but it was a well
Hmm.
rounded book. I mean,
Yes.
very frequently you'll read genre fiction, especially, and since we're focusing on science fiction, I would say especially science fiction, where it had maybe a great idea, but
Right.
not terribly interesting characters.
That's right.
Especially since they're, like in classic science fiction, there was sort of the competent man trope. That
Hmm.
you didn't really have any sort of personality characteristics for like some of Larry Niven's protagonists. They were just sort of there to be a point of view,
Right.
or there was very minimal.
Right. No, I agree.
Yeah, or you would have character studies that were very deep, but didn't have a lot of big ideas. Just you had an interesting person go through a set of challenges. Anyway, this book kind of has it all. It
It
has
does.
great characters, a great plot, great ideas. It really challenges you at times. Takes interesting turns that you don't expect, particularly if you read the sequels. So I think for all those reasons, it's a very satisfying read, and that's what I would say.
Oh, I concur. It's a satisfying read. I would say in some ways it reads like really well written historical fiction, except everything is fictional, right?
Right.
It's like
Yeah.
it feels like a real place that he's writing about
Oh,
with
that's a
real,
lovely way to describe it. Yeah.
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 So I would highly, if you haven't read this book, I would highly recommend it. I mean, and if you've only seen the movies, I still would recommend you read the book.
Yeah, it's almost one of those, if you read no other science fiction novel, you should read this one sort of recommendations I would give.
So let's talk briefly. I don't go into grand detail, but I mean, the basic plot of the book is about a royal. This we're in the far-flung future. It's an imperium of some kind. The galaxy, I don't know what the span's supposed to be, is ruled by these royal families and their fiefdoms. And for whatever reason, well, there's a political machination going on that where the House Atreides is going to move from one fiefdom to another and take over the planet Arrakis, which is also called Dune, which is the source of this this spice called melange, which helps space travelers fold space and travel in space.
Yeah,
Do
it's
you know what?
impossible without
It's
the
impossible
spice.
that it is the only
Yeah.
way to do this faster than light kind of travel. Um, and I think they keep calling it the geriatric spice, and it's geriatric properties, which sounds like it's geritol. What was your what was
I've
your
never understood that.
yeah? Um, I I honestly think he didn't know what the word meant somehow. I don't know. It doesn't
Yeah.
seem quite right. Regardless. Also, in the middle of all this, there is the family, the son, the Paul Atreides is linked to this. His mother is part of this. I don't know, what would you call it? This organization. That's not the right word. Kind of a sect called the Bene Gesserit. I may be mispronouncing some of these words, so please correct me.
Hmm.
And who? How would you describe that group?
They have psychic powers and they're working behind the scenes on their own agenda to
Right.
bring about, kind of almost a religious moment, to kind of
Right.
create this super being that was supposed to then usher in a new age.
Right. So it's claimed at the beginning that their main realm of activity is politics, right? They're manipulating politics from behind the scenes, as you say,
Yeah.
right? They serve as truth sayers for people of power. They seem to be serving the empire, but in some ways they're, I think, directing the empire and they're trying to basically breed the Messiah. It's possible that Paul's this Messiah, right? And really, I'm not, and I'll go from here and not be very complicated. There's a conflict between House Atreides and House Harkonnen over in the politics of the Empire, and there's a trap laid for the House Atreides by House Harkonnen in cahoots with the Emperor about Arrakis, and basically the House Atreides is basically wiped off the map more or less. But Paul escapes and becomes not only this Messiah that the Bene Gesserit may have created, but also somehow he fits into the legends of the people of Arrakis, the Fremen. And eventually they win, right? And they kill the Emperor. No, they don't kill the Emperor. They kill Baron Harkonnen. They banish the Emperor, and Paul marries the Emperor's daughter and makes way for some other books for later, right?
Right.
So, I mean, it is. There's always layers, though. There's always mysteries. One of the things I really like about this book, there's a mystery from the beginning about the Bene Gesserit, what they are, what they're trying to do, and this. And how would you pronounce the Messiah? The Kwisatz Haderach?
I think that's as good as any pronunciation.
Cool.
I always said Kwisatz, but that,
Yeah,
who knows?
sounds like an exotic fruit.
It
Um,
does.
a Kwisatz squeeze with a side of Haderach. Anyway,
Yeah.
there's a political mystery about why the Emperor is doing what he's doing, the intrigue between House Atreides and House Harkonnen, ultimately there's this mystery about Arrakis itself and the Fremen and all of the stuff that's going on there, right? So there's these
Right.
multiple layers, and they all weave together though in a particularly, I think, satisfying way.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
any
It's a
other
it's a
novel,
it's a
well,
juggling
just one
act
of
that
them.
yeah,
Yes,
it's a big juggling act, but he does it superbly.
yes. So, so in fact, I would say that from the beginning, because the very beginning, the scene, which is a famous scene where the Reverend Mother shows up with Paul and tests to see if maybe he is because all the Bene Gesserit are women, right? That's part of the important part of it,
Mhm.
and he's male, and part of this Quasat Hajarat's idea is that it would be a male who could be a Bene Gesserit, and she's testing him this way. This is where the famous quote about fear and is the mind killer comes from, and he emerges, and the Reverend Mother declares him to be human and not just an animal, which is sort of an interesting kind of
Mhm.
notion that runs through the book to some degree. But it creates this initially from the very beginning that the book draws you in, and why I even mentioned the scene is you don't know what's going on except you're on this planet. At this point, you're on the planet Caladan, and you know they're about to move, but it really creates this mystery. Who is this kid? Who are these people?
Mhm.
And then it's almost like the political mystery is secondary, and then it starts to fold together over the course of the novel, right?
Right.
So what about these various mysteries, the drew you in, or what kind of ideas emerged from these mysteries that were of interest to you when you read the book, or that you think are noteworthy?
Well, I think he does a good job of, a gradual reveal.
Mm-hmm.
So there, as you said, there's a mystery about the Bene Gesserit, what are they really up to, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And what unravels, I really want to underline this hard, is it is a chosen one narrative,
Yes.
but not the kind that you're used to seeing.
Right.
It's not the Luke Skywalker story, although we'll talk about connections
Yes.
between Star
Yes.
Wars and Dune later. It's saying that it's a malignant story. And I think like when he realizes how horrific it's going to be for him to fulfill that destiny,
Mm-hmm. Right.
that's like one of the best parts of the book to me.
Okay.
So I'd say that mystery is really great. All the mysteries about the Dune ecology were great. The mysteries about the Fremen, we kind of see the people who
Mm-hmm.
are you want to say natives, but they're not really. I mean, like they're humans who moved to the planet
Right.
first, but in any case, the Fremen who live there, their culture, their worldview, their everything gets gradually revealed. Kind of the whole political context too. And you kind of
Yes.
get more and more information over the course of the novel, and they talk about the emperor, but he finally makes an appearance near the end of the book. Anyway, it is very artfully done that he's doing not just one mystery reveal, but several at the same time, and they're all important.
Right. 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 So there are a lot of interesting ideas in the book that these niches are built out of, right? There's things like just what do we want to know about the planet Arrakis, its ecology, because clearly Herbert is interested in about the way in which just the environment shapes people, right? You
Hmm.
mentioned and the Fremen, the people that live there. There is the whole thing with the spice and where the spice comes from. Of course, we get the sandworms, which are amazing. All of this is in the context of a broader space feudalism where these different houses control these planets, which is then linked up to the the profits generated from the spice, and then the space guild, which then controls space flight itself, and all these things are interconnected, right? What are some other ideas that you found compelling from the novel?
Well, I think there is an interesting way in which they portrayed things that would be familiar normally, but presented in unfamiliar ways. So, like the
Right,
Bene, we're talking a lot about the Bene Gesserit, but their psychic powers that they have,
right.
like the voice.
The voice.
They're never really explained, and it's not like I can control other people with the power of my mind, or I could read minds and so forth. It's different sorts of abilities. It's really
Right,
interesting. Yeah, and that's one, like where you don't need a full explanation of how it works. I know that like modern novels, for example, like fantasy novels, a lot of people like stories where they lay out the magic system
hmm,
almost like it's a physics textbook.
right,
I
right, right.
and you don't get that here, and it's fine
No,
because it would just gotten in the way of the book.
sure. Oh, I agree.
Certain
No,
mysteries need to be solved, certain mysteries do not need to be solved.
it is not entirely clear, and you know, at various stages, whether it's their capacity to be basically human truth detectors, which you kind of think maybe makes more practical sense, but the voice is very significant, right? This capacity to basically just
Right.
order someone and they respond. Um, there are some suggestions of mind reading, but it's a little vague as to whether they really can or can't,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then there's this whole thing with dreams and being able to sort of, at least with Paul, but I think this is supposed to be others as well that can see the future and the past,
Yeah.
right?
And the prophetic part is really important
Yes,
in this from especially from Paul's standpoint because he
yes,
is facing a critical choice and he can see, as I mentioned before, down the path leading from one choice,
hmm,
just something horrific.
that's right. And one thing and prophecy becomes an important part of the Fremen, the folks, the indigenous population, or
Hmm.
as you say, the sort of indigenous population of Arrakis. And there is this discussion again of the fact that the Bene Gesserit have used basically mission. I'm not going to remember what the full term was right now. The missionaries basically that sort of spread
Yeah.
stories about prophecies, and it's suggested in the novel at more than one point in time. I think that the notion was that Bene Gesserit was using stories to try to create control, but that Paul fits this prophecy so directly in a way that seems to transcend the story that was established, right? That really he
Hmm.
not and because it seemed like what was going on is the Bene Gesserit were trying to sort of control local populations by these missionaries. But Paul really fits it better than could have been created, right? Did you not get this sense, or am I making this up? I,
No,
I kind of got
I
this
got
sense
it.
that
Yeah.
the Fremen were that he really was fulfilling a prophecy, not just some created story by political actors.
Yes, and it's not totally clear that that's the case, but there's
That's
enough
right.
suggestion there.
No, none of it's fully answered,
Yeah, as you
but
said, it's a mystery.
but he knows things he shouldn't know and can do things he shouldn't be able to do. Even Jessica does things, his mother, that she doesn't really understand why she knows what she knows.
Right. Yeah, so
Um,
are they just pawns being
right,
manipulated by fate? Or are they
right,
making a set of choices that sort of foundation style you can see the consequences of
right.
them play out? It's not done mathematically like in foundation, but you can see where it would go
Hmm.
if you took this turn and he takes a turn away from where the Bene Gesserit wanted him
Right.
to go at the end. Anyway,
Well, yeah,
it's
no, I think that's right. There's two thoughts though. One, I'm sorry, you said fate. All I could think was Manos, the hand of fate. So maybe that's what's going on here.
the
um,
master doesn't want you to go to Arrakis.
exactly. The second thing is that I think maybe what I'm getting at, or what the story is trying to get at, is that the Bene Gesserit think that they have constructed a pathway,
Yes.
but Paul transcends what they thought they were going to be able to do. And in fact, I think that becomes part of the story of some of the subsequent novels, right? He really is not controllable and does things that they thought that's the pathway, kind of like Harry Seldon and Foundation. It's an interesting comparison
Right.
I hadn't thought about, but they don't control it the way they think they do.
Hmm.
But so let's talk about the Butlerian Jihad and the technology and the Mentats for a second.
Sure. I'm glad because that was the next thing I wanted to talk about too, which is the
I used
odds.
my Bene Gesserit powers to divine. That's what you wanted to talk about.
Excellent. Yes.
Or I
So,
read your notes, maybe.
okay. So these books have like a very interesting take on technology
Yes, very
because
much so.
it's oddly retrograde.
Yes.
So I don't think this was just that he set up this sort of space feudalism and wanted to have the trappings of that, including people with edged weapons
Right.
fighting each other. It's just that technology evolves to a point again unexpected, where it's just not like everything is great. You just have new technology on new technology, and they all get perfected and they all blend seamlessly with each other. It's the technology is kind of at odds with each other. So
Hmm.
you have AI in the past, which gets explained more later, but
Right.
you have AI in the past, it goes rogue, and then they can't have computers anymore,
Right.
but they have human equivalents, the
Right.
mentats,
Yes.
or they develop these. this shield technology that would work at even a personal level as well as
Hmm.
like a spaceship or whatever level. But if you hit it with a laser gun or las gun as they're called in the books,
Hmm.
then there's an explosive effect that kills everybody.
Right.
So that was one of the really interesting things about it because like being a teenager reading a lot of science fiction, again there was this sort of mindset that technology goes in a positive direction from
Right.
its inception to its eventual uh, perfection. The people figure out how the best ways to use it. Here is a somewhat different attitude about technology.
No, you're right. It does have this weird sort of retro feel. I mean, on the one hand, you have this capacity to fold space and travel vast distances, but really your day-to-day technology is kind of limited because you don't have
Yeah,
computers, the Butlerian Jihad, as I understand it, was right. That was the rebellion against the machines that could think like a man.
right.
And then you can't do that anymore. So, yeah. So, and the Mentat concept I think is quite fascinating, right? This idea of a human computer whose job it is to fulfill some of those obligations that you would need a machine to do in
Right.
our world. So the Mentats, I think, it makes you a good leap toward characters, right?
Well, actually,
So,
before we leave that, there's
okay.
also in the books, other people who have technology, but it turns into this very sort of siloed organizations that are the ones who are able to use it. So the spice, right? So
Hmm.
the navigation guild, uh, they use it. It's
Hmm.
necessary in order to travel through space, including to navigate.
Right.
But at the same time, it turns them into mutants.
Right.
And it also makes them kind of their own faction with enormous political power that people have to deal with,
Right.
because you depend on them for space travel. And this is where I'm going to mangle the pronunciation. I'm sure the Tleilaxu, the people who control various sort of biological technology,
Hmm.
but they're almost like a secret society. You go to them and they decide whether or not they're going to give you
Isn't that where
something.
the Mentats come from?
Yeah, and
Yeah. Yeah.
also they're like, that's where they create effectively a resurrected version of one of the characters
Oh, yeah. That's
in
later,
the
but that's
books.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, and they're also like a power unto
Hmm.
themselves, and so it's not that this is the attitude isn't that technology is a common good. It is a resource that then can be hoarded and used against everybody else,
Right.
to
Right.
get
That's right.
political leverage. And in that sense, it's almost cyberpunkish
Gee,
in its outlook on
I
technology.
don't know why two guys end up getting peaches in political science like this book.
I don't know why.
So weird. Um,
Did we get PhDs in political science because of this
because
book?
of Dune. Oh man. Dr. Dune. Anyway,
This spice is mine.
well, I realized that
I think two people got that joke,
uh,
and
you and me.
you and me.
At any rate,
But listeners, if you got this joke, drop us a line at
that's right.
someancientgeeks@gmail.com.
Earn those geek points. So we've talked about basic plot and we've talked about ideas. We've mentioned characters, but we haven't really kind of run down the list. This book is full of characters, and I'm not going to suggest that we talk about all of them. But it does. One of the things that strikes me about the book, especially when I read it the first time, but even now, it really does create this sort of very interesting group at the beginning of the novel, right? You have the
Hmm.
Duke, Leto, you have his concubine, Lady Jessica. They're not actually married because this possibility of leaving open a marriage of political convenience is
Right.
discussed in the text. As Paul is their son, and now I may mangle names, but well, the easy ones are there's Dr. Yui, right?
Hmm.
He's also another one of these sort of weird, comes from a particular the Sook school. He's
Yeah.
like suppo- he's he's mostly Paul's teacher, right? But is he? I can't remember. Is he a medical doctor? Or did I just dream that up because he has the title doctor? I think he does do some medical because he gives
Oh
sedatives and
yeah,
things like that.
yeah.
But he's supposed to be conditioned to be beyond reproach because, yeah, that's right. Because you wouldn't want someone treating the Duke who might poison them or give them the wrong medication or whatever the case.
Wink.
Wink. Yeah, yeah. Oops. There's Gurney Halleck.
Hmm.
I guess is kind of the master of arms. Is that what we would
Yeah, yeah,
characterize him? And also balladeer.
yeah.
He sings quite a bit. He's a bard.
That's
Um,
right. Where the other one was a cleric.
that's right. That's
Yeah,
right. Then you get Duncan Idaho,
fighter.
fighter. And then Thurfer Howitt, right?
Hmm.
He's the master of assassins. He's also a mentat.
Right.
Am I forgetting anybody?
Yeah, but it's sort of a the Duke's court
Yes.
is the
Yes.
feel of all these people.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, I think you got everybody.
Good, good, good. And then, um, but although I will confess for a while, I would get Duncan Idaho and Gurney Halleck kind of confused because they kind of, in some ways, except for the singing part, they were just like, anyway. But
Yeah, but I also confess I've had that problem over the years.
yeah, Duncan Idaho is, of course, that's got to be where Indiana Jones comes from, right? I mean, it's just got to be. Anyway.
Right. And he serves exclusively for for House Atreides, which makes him their own private Idaho.
Oh, well, there you go. It's kind of remarkable that that Idaho. How many tens of thousands of years in the future are we at this point? I mean, of all the
But
states to maintain a
but that's
foothold
really
in,
cool that you have
yeah.
this far future where most references to the contemporary world are eradicated. But it's obviously seems very random that Idaho is the one the one thing reminiscent of our day and age that shows up here. But yeah, I could believe that that's the way that history would play out, possibly.
So then the main antagonists are the Baron Harkonnen, whose first name escapes me right now. Do you remember his first name? He's an
Vladimir,
unpleasant. That's right. That's right. How could it not be? And he's
right?
a very unpleasant fellow.
Again,
Uh,
a call back to contemporary
yes.
societies, but still, it's in this context of this very different and somewhat weird future.
Then his nephew Failed Routha,
Hmm.
who's an unpleasant fellow as well. This is an
Right?
unpleasant family. And then
Exactly.
Raban, whose nickname is the Beast.
Hmm.
We don't mean the blue-haired kind, not the ever-loving blue-haired beast, but
Right.
he's an
Just
unpleasant fellow himself.
a very beastly person.
Yes. Um, and then of the Fremen, I guess I would point out there was the leader Stilgar. There is this guy, Liet Kynes, and then Chani, who becomes Paul's lover and father of his child.
Hmm.
And also Aaliyah is the sister who's born after Leto's killed. Anybody of consequence? Well, also the Emperor. The sublime Emperor
I
Shaddam,
would
whatever.
just say that most of these are very distinct characters,
Yes. Yeah.
and we get their points of view at times, and
Yes.
like one of the scenes, kind of skimming the book again for this episode, that stood out was just kind of Liet Kynes trying to
Hmm.
figure out how to frame the Atreides.
Yes.
Are they really going to help?
Right.
Do they really understand what would be best as an outcome for the control of Dune and what people do with it, and his efforts to terraform the planet and so forth. Anyway,
Hmm.
um, it, it's not hard after years and years and years, later after first reading the book to remember these people.
Right.
And
That's fair.
like for example, I've always been a bit of a fan of Lady Jessica. She was a
Hmm.
very interesting character, and kind of her
Agreed.
internal monologues about, what am I doing here? What do I really want for Paul? Where is this all headed? We're good.
Gridlock. Stockdale. I'm sorry. You remind me of Admiral Stockdale again. The second reference in as many episodes, I think.
I know. Okay.
Who am I? Why am I here? Who can say? Um, sorry. Sometimes podcasting is just an exercise in, random connections.
Right.
Never mind. Other things came to mind. I'll keep to myself, regardless. So I do think it's what you're right. I think it's important to note and to point out that while there is a large cast of characters, Herbert does a very good job of juggling them and making them distinct. Even if sometimes, again, I could get Gurney Halleck and Duncan Idaho a little confused. I
And
realize.
and again, I would say that's one of the things that really makes this book stand out. I mean,
Mhm,
I'm beating this to death a little bit, but for example, some of the characters in Ringworld, as a point of comparison,
mhm.
epic sort of
Yes.
story, they stand out, but because they stand out because they're aliens, and
Mhm.
he does a really good job, Larry Niven, in making the aliens truly alien and different.
Mhm.
His human characters don't stand out nearly as much, and lots of other books like Foundation, uh, there's the mule, and there's some other guy, and then there's another guy.
No, it's true.
Memory faded a lot faster about his cast of characters than it did for Dune, at least for me.
No, the only characters that stand out in Foundation for me are Harry Seldon and the Mule. You're beyond
Yeah,
that. There's all of the characters on the planet over time. They all meld together to me in some capacity.
right.
But yeah, that's a good point. So, um, I think I would point out too. You're right about Paul. He's not just he may be the Messiah, but he's not necessarily. He actually, I think, becomes less likable in some ways through the course of the book, does he not? He certainly becomes
Oh,
harder
definitely.
and
Yes.
more difficult is not the right word, but he definitely becomes a little scarier as time goes on, more ruthless.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yes. And that is the meta message of the books.
Hmm.
Without giving anything further away, I mean, we've obviously spoiled the hell out of this book for somebody who hasn't read it, but there have
Well, yeah.
been multiple film adaptations and so forth. I don't feel quite so bad about spoiling it. But, ultimately, beyond where people who've watched the film adaptations have gone with this
Hmm.
story, you get to see how political power turns people monstrous.
Yes, indeed.
And I
Um,
say no more about that.
I say no more. Um, so here's a question. How much of this book is science fantasy versus science fiction to you, or is it not? I can make an argument in multiple directions, but what are your thoughts on that? So we've talked about this before, I think, but
Yeah, I would say to me, like the ultimate science fantasy is Doctor Who.
hmm
Right? There's no effort to make the the technology explicable.
the Eye of Harmony makes perfect sense, Tom. Come on.
It's just there as a plot device.
Hmm.
Often, oh, I have a ship that I can go through time and space in. Never mind
Hmm.
how it works. I I think it goes up to the border of science
Hmm.
fantasy. I don't know how many feet it puts itself over that border. I don't know. How do you feel about
So
that?
I think I have a slightly different definition of science fantasy. For me, science fantasy. So I understand why you would say about that about Doctor Who. I still don't necessarily think of it as science fantasy. I think about things like the Jedi, or in this case, the Bene Gesserit, anything that infuses some kind of mysticism and almost magic. I think that's the line for me. Is it
Okay,
is it somehow magical? Not
right.
even a hand wave toward it being based in some science. I made the joke about the Eye of Harmony, but I mean, we could play a nerd game about how. I mean, they don't do a very good job of it, but how they explain the technology in Doctor Who in
Hmm.
a way that at least isn't supposed to be magic. And one of the things I think is interesting, and I've already alluded to it though, with the Bene Gesserit and the whole thing with the prophecy on Dune, and there's these hints that it's all actual manipulation, right? That it's genetics and it's politics and it's subterfuge. But then certain things happen that cannot be explained except by some kind of mystical reality, I think, right?
Yeah.
What
Well, I
happens
don't.
to what happens to a Lee in the womb, for example, is
Right.
kind of mystical. So I think and again, I'm not pressing the point, and I'm not even trying to put this in a box, but I find that element of the story to be a little more fantasy-esque than some of the other elements of the story.
Right. So this is really, one of those tough definitional questions that you can take in different directions, as you
Sure.
and I have, and you can also ask, what's the relevance? I think the importance of answering this question is just, will this book appeal to people,
Right.
or will any science fiction or science fantasy novel, movie, whatever, appeal to people? I think it's not about the technology.
No, I agree.
Is in that sense, it's whoever thinks that science fiction is purely reductively just about technology and its
Right.
implications, it's not that.
Right.
Though, on the other hand, I will argue with myself here, it is about ecology, which is a definite science,
Oh, sure.
and it's the central science of the book. So, in that sense, yes, it is really about science in fiction.
Right.
Is it about where the technology is so futuristic that it's difficult to explain, but it's still somewhat plausible?
Right.
It's not where we cringe at just sort of the hand wavy
Hmm.
things that authors will do. I would say that it's, a lot of what happens here is certainly, I would imagine, plausible. Like, could you imagine a future in which dot 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 space
Hmm.
travel is difficult and is, a technology that requires people to effectively become mutants in order to master it. Okay, I can buy that as much as I can buy a warp drive or a hyperdrive or other things that aren't fully explained. But I'll nod along as the book
Right.
goes through it and not feel like the suspension of disbelief has just crashed. So in that sense, as I think it's still science fiction. Another thing, I'm going all over the place here, but is the technology unexplained necessary for the plot, and arguably is just a plot device. So there's like the Lathe of Heaven by Ursula Le Guin.
Hmm.
That there's somebody who develops this amazing psychic ability that through his dreams he can reshape reality.
Hmm.
It's a plot device designed for the author to explore something that she wanted to walk the reader through with her.
Right.
But it's not explained at all, and it's probably even unexplainable
Right.
in any sort of sensible way. It's just sort of there, and things in this book certainly fit that particular mold.
Right. I guess, I mean, in some ways, it's just a podcasty kind of question, but I just, to me, there is a lot of it is very much in the mold of broadly cast science fiction.
Hmm.
All the discussion about mentats and the guild and the way in which the technology does or doesn't work, or the way in which they've responded to technology, is science fiction to me. I just find some of the mystical parts to be more fantastical and just something interesting. It's not a hard science fiction book in that sense to me. Not that it matters in any appreciable way. Um, in the same way that I think Star Wars does a similar kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's just
So in your mind, you have
yeah,
a woo gauge, and the
yeah,
needle keeps going up and up, and there's a certain level of woo at which
yeah,
point
yeah.
it goes into the red zone.
Maybe so. I'll have to. That sounds kind of technological. The Woo meter, Doctor Woo. Um,
Oh man, I'm
uh,
certainly going to remember that one
um,
and use it for
well,
good.
I think part of what's interesting to me about it, and then just to reiterate something I said, and maybe say it more clearly, maybe make it, maybe say it less clearly. Um, I find it interesting in a story like this, wherein which the characters think that they understand the technology, or what they're doing is somehow based on, again, either politics or genetics or some other kind of training. But really, there is something going on in this book that's well beyond science. I get that's what I find to be interesting. It's interesting, but it
Yes.
makes it. That's why I even asked the question, I guess. It has, in my mind, quote unquote science fantasy elements to it. Not pure fantasy, but it's an interesting element. And I think also because the book takes religion in some way seriously, right? And it continues, I think, in the other novels. Does it not?
Yes.
So I think that that's an interesting sort of element that goes beyond just science fiction. Anyway, that's my weird digression for the moment. Done.
Well, I would compare it to quantum mechanics to some degree. So you have
Okay.
things like like quantum entanglement,
Hmm.
which we don't have a explanation for. It's spookiness at a distance.
Hmm.
If I'm remembering the turn of phrase exactly, but it's just there, right?
All right.
We don't currently have an explanation for it. Who knows? We might never have an explanation
All right.
for it, but it exists.
Hmm. Okay.
That's not necessarily unscientific. It's just weird.
Is it Schrodinger's Moab Dib?
Schrodinger's sandworm.
They wouldn't fit in the box, Tom. Come on.
Yeah, that'd be a really big box. But there are baby sandworms.
That's true.
There
That
are
is
baby
true. That
sandworms.
is true. So, are there anything? I mean, we glossed over it because we could spend all day. But are there any other specific characters you wanted to shout out before we talk about maybe some specific scenes of interest?
No, I think that covers it. I'm eager to get onto the scenes.
So what are some scenes that stick in your mind?
Well, I think the scene with the Reverend Mother and the
Hmm.
box and
Yes,
are you
that's
are you
iconic.
a human?
Yes.
I think that hits hard for anybody reading that book. It's like, what the hell just happened?
The fact that the phrase "Gom Jabbar" does not sound ridiculous is a testament to how good that scene is.
Yes. So I mentioned another one. Some of the scenes with Liet Kynes really
Hmm.
stood out for me.
Hmm.
The first time he rides the sandworm.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the woo meter. There's
Yeah. Yeah.
also, I think, the woe meter, and there are a lot of scenes that go
Doctor
high
Wu
on.
meets Doctor Woe. Next time on.
And,
Sorry.
there are a lot of scenes in this book that go high
Yeah,
on
that's true.
the woe
That is
meter, and,
true.
and certainly the first writing of a sandworm
Hmm.
classifies as that. And also like the coup at the beginning of the book, when
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Harkonnens overthrow the Atreides. I mean,
Yes.
that's
It
brutal
comes
and
earlier in the book than you might expect.
right, right. How about you? What stands out for
So
you?
the scene that will always, and it's a very simple scene, but it's a great, dare I say, world building scene. But it's a great writing scene. It's just a well written scene. When Duke Leto meets Stilgar from the Fremen, and the Fremen spits in front of the
Right.
Duke, and that's a sign of respect in a society in which water is so precious. And the sort of the whole that tells you so much about Arrakis. It also shows you this clash of culture between these guys that come from Caladan who have now come to Arrakis to govern. I just think it's a great scene, and
Yeah.
it's nothing fancy, but it's Herbert knowing his world and being able to communicate it to the reader. I think in a very effective way.
Yeah. And so this book is full of high level woe scenes, and you could go on and on. The first
Yes,
time a sandworm makes an appearance in the book, kind
yes,
of
agreed.
eating up the Atreides harvester machine
Right,
that they have running out on the sand. It's just incredible how many
and in that scene when
woe scenes there are.
the Duke rescues the workers, and this is a very sort of moral moment for him. It
Yeah.
also affects
Yeah.
Kynes.
Whatever.
Yes.
John Maynard Keynes.
Precisely. Precisely. Um, okay. I also like the scene with the shout out Mapes
Hmm.
when she first sort of communicates to Jessica about the Fremen and all that. I thought was really good.
Yeah, the duels are very exciting.
The duels are exciting. Yes, they
Yeah.
are. Lots of duels.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Um, what do you think about the notion that this highly influenced Star Wars?
Oh, I think it definitely did. So you have definitely, the chosen one narrative,
Hmm. Yes.
though it's very benign in Star Wars.
Hmm.
You have the mysterious force
Yes.
that isn't fully explained. You have the rebellion. It's all over
Mm.
Star Wars.
Yeah.
Did
Tatooine.
I leave out anything? Oh, Tatooine,
Tatooine.
obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Duh.
But the Bene Gesserit, the voice is very much the Jedi, right? That whole
Yeah,
thing is. These
yeah.
are not the android. These are not the droids you're looking for. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. So what are your general overall thoughts and assessments of the novel?
As I said, I think it is a book that would appeal to science fiction fans and non-fans alike.
Yeah,
I think it is definitely deserving its classic status.
I agree.
It's very fun on a reread,
Yes, it is.
and go out and read it, man. If you haven't
No,
read it or you haven't
if you
read it
haven't read it,
recently, I
agreed.
I think it also occupies an interesting place in science fiction. I didn't love Herbert's other books
No, I
outside the
tried to
Dune
read
series.
some others and did not.
Yeah,
Didn't
I
take.
tried like the White Plague
Yeah,
was a real disappointment. Anyway, in his Dune books get progressively less good,
I agree with that.
but they're still definitely worth reading. Again, to kind of complete the whole narrative that he had in mind.
Right. No, I think that's fair. Yeah, I had reread Dune a few years ago, and then I tried to read the next one, and it didn't do it for me. I kind of feel like I should try again, but I don't know. I it didn't. I don't remember what it was. It felt more impressionistic and less narrative. I don't know, but maybe that was just I was in a
Well, I
bad
think
mood.
I think that the characters were a little less interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
And though it certainly had a lot of unexpected twists, right? So if you
yes.
you read it and you, you say to yourself, "He did what?" But,
Oh, that's right.
but in a
That's right.
good way, not like it was a jarring discrepancy in the behavior of a character, but like okay, in hindsight, yeah, I get it, but
I mean,
whoa,
I'm pretty sure I read all the way through to Chapter House Dune,
yeah,
but I don't remember a lot of it, to be honest.
yeah.
One shocking thing I do remember, but I won't share it now, just in case someone hasn't read it. But anyway, is there anything about the book that any critiques or things that upon the reread that kind of struck you as any critiques or negatives or anything like that?
So the only thing I'll bring up, which is really a much later version of me reading this book than the younger one.
Hmm.
So have you ever read any blog posts by Brett Devereaux?
I have not.
He like I got to reading him about his sort of military history analyses of the battles in the Lord of the Rings movies.
Okay.
And he's an interesting guy. I forgot the exact name of his blog. The word pedantry it features prominently in it. And being a pedant myself, I said, "Ooh, I got to read that."
I found my people.
You're my number one guy. But he also did a series of posts that were called the Fremen Mirage.
Uh-huh.
And what he does in there is he says there's this conceit in a lot of literature, not just in science fiction and fantasy, that people who are more primitive warriors,
Right.
like the Fremen or like Conan, or so forth, are kind of expected to be better warriors.
Right. Right.
You
Right.
know,
Right.
yeah, and I think that stood out. Kind of again, kind of skimming through the book again. Kind of the way that Herbert portrays them. That's not great. And I also think that uh, the the white savior elements of it, they're kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
That's not great. Though again,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
not really a savior. So if you want to like impress a colonial narrative onto it, it's a destructive one here. So
Right. That's true.
I think that's a little more forgivable.
Now, there is some of that going on. There's also some interesting. I don't. This is a neutral statement because I don't really know what I really think about it. The way in which he kind of appropriates some older language to this society. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to think about that. I mean, a lot of it's sort of Arabic-esque, right? Although he pulls a bunch of other things as well.
Yeah. So,
The,
okay, I found the name of the blog, a collection
okay,
of unmitigated pedantry.
there you go.
And I definitely
I see that
recommend
drew
reading
you
it.
in.
Yeah.
Um,
It's because unmitigated is like unapologetic. Like,
of course.
yes, yes, I am a pedant.
So that two one thing and one is also it just didn't age well, I think.
Mhm.
Which and I noticed it in the past, but I really noticed it this time, which is Baron Harkonnen's homosexuality as a marker of his evil, kind
Oh,
of.
yes, that's an excellent point. Yeah.
And that didn't age well. I know that he's a masochist and he's also clearly at least maybe a pedophile, but it really kind of came across as a marker of his being a villain
Yeah.
that he had this particular predilection. And I will say that upon rereading, as we are talking about offline, the book is separated into three books, and I think the first book is Dune, Muad'Dib, and the Prophet. Dune, which is the first 200 pages of the novel, I think is just exquisitely paced and
Hmm.
written and just really draws you in. I felt like the second two books, the Muad'Dib and the Prophet, drag in places a little bit, not terribly, but it seemed the pacing is not as good as the first section of the book.
Right.
And the only thing I also struck me is that the ending seems really fast, right?
Yeah,
Like,
that struck me too, looking at the book again for this read. It is wrapped up pretty fast.
I
Where
mean,
you, as you said,
a
the previous
lot of things
sections. Yeah.
happen. A
Yeah.
lot of things. I mean, it's good. It's satisfying, but we've gone through all of this sort of, you know, Paul in the wilderness kind of stuff, and then all of a sudden, man, the emperor's there. They blow through the shield wall. They somehow manage to capture all of the relevant players. They're able to get the guild to stand down, and before you know it, Paul's married to the emperor's daughter and is about to become emperor, and they've shifted the emperor off to the prison planet. It's really like bam, 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 and that I
Right.
don't know. I didn't necessarily need it drug out. I just feel like I would have preferred, had I been his editor, to say, could we maybe speed up some of the middle and then maybe have a little more detail at
Yes.
the end. Not a ton, but some. But it's a minor. This is a I'm griping about a masterpiece, and that's probably unnecessary. But that struck me reading it this time.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with you about the pacing. Where it was, maybe a little too slow and could have been tightened up in the middle parts of
Mhm.
the book, and then the end happens fairly rapidly.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll just say very briefly because I don't want to spoil anything. So we've already kind of said it. I did find the sequels to not match the original.
Hmm.
I may try them again because I'm kind of curious as to whether the last time I tried it was just because you know, was in a bad mood. Who knows? But yeah, but there are a number of them. Did you ever read the ones his son, or was it his son that wrote the other ones, or was it somebody else? I can't remember now.
Yeah, I no, I didn't touch them. I was warned off them.
Yeah, yeah.
And I kind of had lost steam so much with Herbert's
Yes,
own
that
books
was
that
kind of
I
my.
didn't want to dive into it. Plus, it kind of positioned as revealing things, in the past of
Right,
the Dune
right, right, right.
universe, like the Butlerian Jihad,
Right.
that I didn't really need to know. So I didn't have a strong motivation
That's
to
right.
to read.
That's right. Okay, good deal. So, what about? I just realized the typo in my notes. It says mercy. Maybe that means is it mercy that we're at the end of this episode? It should say merch.
No, merch.
Because
Well, okay,
I'm
before we get to the
trying.
merch, can I ask one question?
Yes.
So why is it that in science fiction and fantasy, I'll just say science fiction because it's more understandable in fantasy, but in science fiction, that feudalism is such a recurring motif, monarchical feudalism.
Hmm.
There's a lot of space opera with it.
Yes.
So or
But empires are,
imperial
you know,
feudalism is another. It's practically the same thing. So why is that?
that's a good question. I mean, because you're right. I mean, found all the Asimov had the Galactic Empire,
Right.
where Star Wars has the Empire. This has an empire. Ming is an emperor. Um, I think it. I don't know. I'm just guessing because I've noticed it. I don't know if I thought about why it is the case. I think it's just easier. One, I think a lot of this is written during the Cold War, and the
Hmm.
idea of an adversary or a bad regime being highly centralized is part of American culture at the time. I think that's part of it.
Right.
I think it's also easier to make the bad guy if an empire has one person at the top of the pyramid, so it's easier to identify who the villain is, right?
Right. And if they're an autocrat, then they're going to be bad.
That's right.
It's an easy step to believing in their malignancy.
And I think a lot of this also builds off of, previous like legends and stories, and it just lends itself to, whether it's about old kingdoms and conflicts of kingdoms and but it is central, right? I mean, but in fantasy too, right? I mean, Sauron is basically an evil dictator.
Right.
Almost always books have evil dictators.
Yeah, and I'm not letting fantasy off the hook here
Right,
because I think you can imagine pre-modern societies without autocrats.
right,
You could have a setting that looks like the Roman Republic, for example.
right.
Or you could have the Greek city-states. Anyway, it's just always has bothered me a little bit, and I'm not criticizing Dune for this,
Hmm.
but I'm just saying it kind of is like this weird lack of faith in other political systems, their survivability into the future.
Right. I think that's a really good question. There's got to be an answer. I don't have
Hmm.
that. There must be books that take seriously the possibility of some sort of uh, pluralistic society or political order in the future. I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of it becomes to pick another theme that you and I have talked about recently on the podcast, mostly in movies, where it's evil corporations that have become the central figure.
Right.
I think probably part of it has to do simply with you need some kind of centralized autocracy as your villain. A corporation will do it, an empire
Hmm.
will do it, some kind of house will do it. I don't, but there is a weird obsession with sort of royalty, right? Or
Right.
aristocracy is the word that I actually wanted. But there is that is not atypical. I don't know what the appeal is. Because in some ways it is an odd question. Why would it? And again, this is who knows. Doesn't really matter. But why would tens of thousands of years in the future we would have evolved to or devolved to feudal houses and families controlling territory?
I can't explain.
And the other part about this, again, and not to break it down, because it doesn't entirely, from a political science slash history point of view, and I'm no expert on feudal order, but I don't know that it makes sense that you would transfer a royal house or a ducal house from one planetary system to another. What would that make any sense whatsoever? I'm not sure. But often
Hmm.
feudalism is definitionally linked to the land you control.
Right.
And the idea that your power base is somehow separated from what you control doesn't really make sense, really. But oh well. That's a great question. I don't obviously don't have a good answer for it, but nonetheless, I was willing to talk about it for 10 minutes,
Yeah.
proving that I'm a good podcaster and a good professor. So see,
There you
that's
go.
how it works. Um, okay. I'm sorry, I should have asked. Is there anything else that we want to talk about
No, no,
before we
no.
get
That's
that
fine.
much?
That's fine.
I'm
That
so
that
obsessed
was
with
my.
not forgetting merch because I've done it multiple times
You're going to
that,
drive us
that I'm
towards
going
it.
to drive it no matter what.
You have prophetic dreams about getting to the merch section
That's right.
of the podcast. And here we are.
Here we are. Um, I will go ahead and say I had no merch, not that I can think of at least. How about yourself?
I had a surprising amount of merch. And I think it was because of the nature of Dune in the science fiction fandom community
Hmm.
at the time, that it was such a well respected book that it generated things that if you had a bookstore like ours, you
Right,
came into contact with.
right.
So there was the Dune Encyclopedia, which I sadly don't own anymore.
Hmm.
Like when I look at like seller's remorse or donator's remorse of things I got rid of over the years, I'm a little mortified at myself for getting rid of this because it was a good reference to Dune,
Right.
or the first couple of Dune books. And it's impossible to find a cheap copy of it. It's one of those books that went out of print so long ago that booksellers are charging like $200, $300 for buying a used copy. I had a record when it was a thing that you could buy records that
Hmm.
it featured authors or actors reading science fiction stories. That was
Right.
Frank Herbert reading the banquet scene from Dune.
Okay.
Had that. And then the thing I really want to talk about is the Dune board game that came out from Avalon Hill. It was
Okay.
designed by the same people who did my favorite board game of all time, Cosmic Encounter. And it was really designed to have 6 players, each representing the different factions.
Okay.
So House Atreides, the Fremen, the Harkonnens, the Emperor, the Bene Gesserit, the
Right.
Guild. Anyway, all of them had very different capabilities in the game, much like Cosmic Encounter, but I won't belabor the connection there. But it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. Like very often you'll have board games that really are just kind of slapping the
Right.
name of an IP on
Right.
something. You could do Dune Monopoly. You could do
Sure.
Dune Uno or Duno. But this was intrinsically in the game
Right.
design and the mechanics a perfect recreation of Dune. You really needed to have 6 people to play it, but
There's a
when you
profound
did,
problem here.
it's magical.
Most
It's
nerds don't
terrific.
have 5 other friends that want to play these games with them.
Yeah, it's back in print. By a different company because Avalon Hill is long gone. I've actually seen it at like Barnes and Noble in the game section,
Okay.
but it's fantastic. So if you're a fan of this book and you have 5 other friends willing to play it, and yeah, go out and get it. It's tons of fun. So you
Cool.
you had nothing.
I couldn't, I had the novels, that's all that I had.
Was there anything that you wanted to
I
have
didn't
in
even,
hindsight?
it's funny. I mean, in hindsight, I don't even know that it occurred to me. I don't know. Maybe it was just
Hmm.
as much as like merch. I don't know. I think it's funny that I never really considered anything that was just novels. I didn't necessarily think of merch associated with them necessarily. Now, the Dune Encyclopedia sounds appealing to me. I wouldn't mind having that if we're going to choose something now.
Yeah.
And then I did see somewhere the other day as I was going through the internet looking for reference material and reach for the podcast, that someone had like a big macrame sandworm. That wouldn't be bad. But beyond that, I got nothing else. Is something that you would
Okay.
like to have?
Well, given my odd fascination with merch that flies, I think a radio-controlled ornithopter would be a lot of fun.
At some point, I think you need to make a new Substack and call it Merch That Flies.
And that will be the name of it. Just go straight to the heart of what it's about. Now, the thing that I definitely would not want to have, let me emphasize, I would not like to have had when I was a hiring manager would be the box and the gom jabbar for job interviews. And I would be able to ask people, are you a human being?
Fear is the job killer.
And I'm saying I would not like that.
Of course
Just
not.
like I would not like to
Not
have the Voight Kampf
I was going to say
machine.
this is 2 weeks in a row that this is coming
Exactly.
up. There's some kind of PTSD I think you're working out here on the podcast, my friend.
Well, God, being a manager is just not as fun as people expect.
Oh, come on.
Anything,
You just put on a suit and walk around and say, I am the boss. I am the boss. I boss you. I knew someone like that.
I am the Kwisatz Haderach.
There's a reason why I'm retired now.
Yes. But we could make this a regularly occurring feature of the podcast. Like, was there any merch that you'd use when conducting a job interview?
I could use a truth sayer,
There you go.
at my side at all times.
Okay.
All right. Having said all that, we have now come to the conclusion of part 1 of Dune-A-Palooza. Next week, it's David Lynch's Dune, which I have not yet watched. So we'll find out whether it warps my brain between now and next week.
Some mind-altering drugs might be required.
Well, or is it by itself a mind-altering drug?
It is, but yeah, okay, true.
So we'll see how it goes. Looking forward to it. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
See you then. Well, the spice must flow and we must go. Thus ends another episode of Ancient Geeks. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe and drop us a review maybe, either on the podcast app of your choice or via email. at someancientgeeks@gmail.com. And also find us on Substack, where we have a blog, and other social media outlets such as Reddit, Facebook, and Blue Sky. All content copyright 2025, Tom Grant and Stephen Taylor. Music by Reversed Image, whom you can find on Pixabay. See you next time.